Today, I'm taking a $20 graphics card that was never meant for serious gaming and pushing it as far as it can go. The goal is simple: optimize the system, overclock the GPU, lower the right settings, and see if this cheap card can actually reach 240 FPS. But this is not just about moving sliders and hoping for the best. I'll show what settings matter, what mistakes can crash your PC, and where the real limit of a budget GPU actually is. Number 1. Know the real problem. A $20 GPU is usually not a gaming upgrade. In this case, the card is something like Nvidia GeForce GT 710, often 2GB DDR3, 64-bit, tiny power draw. It was built to add display outputs to office PCs, not to push a competitive shooter. Hitting 240 FPS means your PC must create a new frame roughly every 4 milliseconds. And that is a massive ask for a card that can be at 100% usage before action even starts. So the problem is not one magic setting. The problem is a chain. Old GPU, slow video memory, weak CPU, old storage, background tasks, wrong driver, and game settings that are too heavy. The right goal is to separate those problems one by one. First, make the PC clean and stable. Second, make Fortnite as light as possible. Third, test the card. Fourth, overclock only in small, safe steps. The result might be 240 FPS in a simple creative map, empty area, or very low 3D resolution. In a real match with builds, effects, and players, the honest result may be lower. That is not failure. The point is to squeeze the maximum out of the card without breaking the system or lying about what the hardware can do. Number 2, check the hardware. Before any overclock, confirm exactly what is in the PC. Open Task Manager, Device Manager, or a hardware monitor, and write down the GPU model, CPU, RAM, storage, and display cable. Many cheap GT 710 cards have 2GB of DDR3 memory, a narrow 64-bit memory bus, no external power cable, and a small passive heatsink. That tells you two important things. First, the card will be limited by memory speed, not just core clock. Second, cooling may become a problem even though the card uses little power. Also, check the CPU. A system with an old Core i5 and a hard drive can feel slow before the game even launches. The hard drive will not usually decide your peak FPS, but it can make Fortnite take forever to install, verify, load, and stream assets. An SSD is one of the biggest quality of life upgrades for old systems. If you have less than 8GB of RAM, fix that before chasing 240 FPS. If Windows is full of random launchers, browser tabs, game overlays, or antivirus warnings from sketchy booster tools, fix that first too. Overclocking a messy PC just makes a messy PC crash faster. Number 3, build a baseline. Do not start by moving sliders. Start by measuring. Install the newest driver that officially supports your exact GPU and operating system. Then install a trusted monitor, like MSI Afterburner with Riva Tuner, or another hardware monitor you already trust. Do not use random FPS booster installers from unknown sites, especially if your antivirus complains. For the first test, leave the GPU at stock settings. Open Fortnite. Choose the same game mode every time. Stand in the same area, and record the same data for 2 or 3 minutes. Write down average FPS, 1% lows if available, GPU usage, CPU usage, GPU temperature, GPU clock, memory clock, RAM usage, and whether the game stutters. If GPU usage is near 100% while CPU usage is not maxed out, the graphics card is the main wall. If one CPU core is constantly pinned and the GPU usage is low, the CPU is holding you back. If FPS is okay for 5 seconds and then freezes, storage, RAM, shader cache, or background programs may be the issue. A baseline matters because without it, you cannot tell whether an optimization helped or just made the game uglier. Number 4, clean the system. Now remove the easy problems before touching the overclock. Update Windows only when you have time to restart. Then close all background apps you do not need. Turn off screen recorders, browser hardware acceleration, extra launchers, RGB software, and overlays that sit on top of the game. Set Windows Power Mode to best performance while plugged in. Make sure the PC is using the GT 710 for Fortnite, not the wrong graphics device on a mixed GPU system. If the PC is dusty, shut it down, unplug it, and clean vents and fans carefully from the outside first. Never open a power supply and never work inside a powered PC. If the GT 710 has a passive heatsink, case airflow matters more than people think. One slow case fan can be the difference between stable clocks and thermal slowdown. Also, check storage space. Fortnite needs room not only for the game, but also for updates, verification, shader cache, and temporary files. If the game is installed on a very old hard drive, expect long loading and stutter. Move it to an SSD when possible. This step is boring, but it is often the difference between bad GPU and bad entire PC. Number 5. Lower Fortnite correctly. The biggest FPS gain will come from reducing the amount of work the GT 710 has to render. In Fortnite, switch to performance mode, also called lower graphical fidelity. Then restart the game. Set view distance based on what you actually need, not what looks nice. Put shadows off, anti-aliasing off, textures low, effects low, post-processing low, motion blur off, and V-Sync off. Use full screen mode if it is more stable on your system. Set the frame limit to 240 during testing, or unlimited for a short benchmark if you want to see the absolute peak. Start with 1920 by 1080 and 100% 3D resolution only to measure how bad the starting point is. Then drop the real resolution to 1600 by 900, then 1280 by 720. After that, adjust 3D resolution in small steps. Try 80%, 70%, 60%, and 50%. Below 70%, the game may become difficult to read. You might get the number on screen, but enemies, builds, and movement can turn into blurry shapes. That is the trade-off. For a real playable setup, stable 100 or 120 FPS at readable resolution can be better than unstable 240 at a resolution that destroys visibility. Number 6. Use driver settings. After the in-game settings are light, adjust the driver side. In the Nvidia Control Panel, or Nvidia app, create a program profile for Fortnite instead of changing everything globally. Set power management to prefer maximum performance. Set texture filtering quality to high performance. Turn off V-Sync for the game profile if you are chasing low input delay. Low latency mode can help some systems, but test it instead of assuming it is always better. On very weak hardware, every setting can behave differently because the GPU is already fully loaded. Also, check your monitor. You can measure 240 FPS even on a 60 Hz display, but you will not actually see 240 unique refreshes unless the monitor and cable support that refresh rate. Some GT 710 models use HDMI 1.4, DVI, or VGA, so display output can limit your visible refresh rate. That does not stop benchmarking, but it matters for the real experience. If your monitor is limited to 60 or 120 Hz, the smoothness target should match the screen. Do not confuse a high FPS counter with a complete competitive setup. FPS, refresh rate, frame time, and input delay all work together. Number 7. Overclock the core. Now start the actual overclock. Open MSI Afterburner, reset everything to default, and do not enable apply at Windows startup yet. That setting is useful only after you already know the overclock is stable. If you enable it too early and the PC crashes after login, you can trap yourself in a bad profile. Start with the core clock. Increase it by a small amount, like 10 to 20 MHz. Apply, test Fortnite or a benchmark for several minutes, and watch the screen. You are looking for flickering, weird shapes, driver crashes, black screens, or sudden performance drops. If everything is stable, increase another small step and test again. When the system crashes or the image becomes unstable, reboot if needed. Return to the last stable setting and lower it a little more for safety. Do not increase voltage on a cheap old card. The gain is usually not worth the extra heat and risk. On a GT 710, the overclocking limit can arrive suddenly. A modern card might let you reset easily, but a very weak old card can make the desktop lag so hard that even clicking reset becomes difficult. That is why small steps matter. Number 8. Tune the memory. After the core is stable, move to memory clock. On a card like the GT 710, memory bandwidth is a major limit because the DDR3 memory and narrow bus cannot feed the GPU quickly. That means memory overclocking can help, but it can also create visual errors faster than expected. Increase memory in small steps, such as 25 to 50 MHz. Test after every step. If textures flash, edges sparkle, objects look corrupted, or the game crashes, memory is too high. Back down until it is clean. Do not judge stability from the lobby alone. The lobby can show a high number because very little is happening. Test in a creative map with movement, then test in a real match or replay where buildings, effects, and other players appear. Watch 1% lows, not only average FPS. A setup that averages 180 but drops to 35 during fights feels worse than a setup capped at 120 with steady frame times. Once you find a core and memory combination that survives real gameplay, save it as a profile. Then reduce each clock slightly for daily use. The last 1% of overclock is where most crashes live. Number 9. Fix crashes. If the PC freezes after an overclock, do not keep pushing. Hold the power button only if the system is completely unresponsive, then boot again and reset the overclock. If MSI Afterburner applies the bad profile at startup, boot Windows into safe mode and disable Afterburner from startup, or uninstall it temporarily. This is exactly why you do not apply new overclocks at Windows startup during testing. If the game crashes but Windows is fine, reduce the core clock first. If the picture shows strange pixels or texture errors, reduce memory clock first. If performance gets worse after an overclock, the card may be thermal throttling or correcting errors. More clock is not always more FPS. Check temperature, case airflow, and whether the clock is actually staying where you set it. If Fortnite suddenly stutters after driver changes, verify the game files in the Epic Games launcher and let shaders rebuild. If settings keep resetting, check whether the Fortnite settings file is read-only. If the PC has a very old hard drive, do not blame the GPU for every hitch. Loading stutter and render speed are different problems, and they need different fixes. Number 10. Set the final profile. The best final setup for a $20 GPU is not the highest number you can screenshot. It is the highest setting that survives a real match without crashes, overheating, or unreadable visuals. A realistic final profile might look like this. Fortnite in performance mode, low settings, V-Sync off, frame cap at 120, 144, 165, or 240, depending on your monitor. 1000, 280 by 720. Resolution, 3D resolution between 60 and 80%. Nvidia power management set for performance. Unnecessary background apps closed, and a modest core and memory overclock saved only after testing. If the GPU sits at 100% usage and the CPU has headroom, the GT 710 is simply the wall. A faster CPU may improve loading and reduce some stutter, but it will not turn the GT 710 into a real modern gaming card. In the best case, you can hit 240 FPS in light scenes by sacrificing resolution and visual clarity. In the practical case, you choose the smoothest stable cap the card can hold. That is the honest way to overclock a cheap GPU. Measure first, optimize second, overclock carefully, test everything, and stop when the number on screen starts costing more visibility and stability than it is worth.